Radcliffe, and it's certainly a pleasure to be on the program with organizers who have been a part just in the last 2 months with what was never intended to happen in the United States, and some who would say it would never happen in the United States, and that is the election of a black man as its president. Now, what Barack Obama knew that most of us did not is that the only thing that can trump structural racism in the United States is effective organizing. You can't legislate racism away. You can't educate it away. You've got to organize and demand that it stop. This country, the enslavement of the African people was 143 years old when this nation was founded in 1787 with the passage and ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Already, Africans had been enslaved 143 years. One of the first acts passed by the new Constitution, the Naturalization Act of 1790, said this: only free white people can begin the process of naturalization in the United States. It meant that the founders of this country knew about the experience and the history in the Caribbean, knew about the history of Brazil by Portugal, knew about the mestizo people that had been created in the Southern Hemisphere's bottom half. And they were determined that that would not happen in the United States. So you had to open immigration to the United States by allowing European men and European women to come to the United States. Otherwise, we would be a mestizo people today. And it's the first act of the new nation, a race-constructed nation. The biggest fears of the founders would be that the enslaved African diaspora, that process, their biggest fear was the organizing of the black masses. Even on the ships, founded, built, paid for by the European nations, there were tight packed. You talk about the torture of the shoe and the torture of all the words that you use. It's incredible, but that torture has been happening as long as racism exists in this world, and particularly in the United States. The only thing that overcomes it, I remember Barbara Major, a teacher of mine, well, she's a colleague, but she teaches me a lot. She would be organizing in public housing, and all of us who were white mental health workers, she would come back from a day and say, you know, mental health's about to drive black folks crazy. You know? Now, why did she say that? Because in none of our training as white therapists, in none of our training as white psychiatrists was racism ever mentioned. So that we would approach the profession with a great gap in our knowledge. Didn't mean we were bad people. It meant that we had not been taught the internalization process. The intent of the race-constructed nation was that persons of color, and particularly African peoples, would internalize a sense of self that would operate in two different ways. One, succumb to the oppression, succumb to it, and begin to think of yourself as less than. That's why we have the word minority in the language of race today. People are not minorities because they are fewer in number. People are minorities in a race-constructed society because of their relationship to power. You are of minor interest, says the Constitution. You are less than. You know, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. A woman's place is. Children should be. He don't stand a childman's chance in. Old Joe's a good Negro. He knows his place. We all go to the same schools. We have always been instilled in us a sense of the race construct. It's unconscious, it's unyielding, and it is something that we must take on. Otherwise, as wonderful as all of this work is, and it's been a blessing to be here tonight, you'll be going to Albany and all 50 states for the next 400 years. Unless we begin to approach these issues from an understanding of structural racism. When we don't, all the good intentions in the world. See, if we were organized for Albany like we were for Obama, none of those politicians would dare give us a celebrity drop-by, tell us they're glad to see us there, hope that we come back next year, but I got another meeting that I must get to. See, you got power when a politician stay for whatever you have to say, and you can require it if it takes all day and if it takes all week. So the organizing is the biggest fear that the United States has. The founders were very much afraid that oppressed people from Europe would join with enslaved Africans going through the process of slavery here and with the indigenous of this land. That's why they created race. Race was created as a social control mechanism. It has worked well in terms of creating wealth for the dominant white culture in the United States. It has much to go on. President Obama's victory is the first step, not the last step. See, after the Emancipation Proclamation, white people said, you know, slavery's over. We all leave. In 1968, with the passage of fair housing, racism is no more. We're an equitable nation. It's a level playing field. Now, with the election of President Obama, we don't have to talk about race anymore. It's all over the United States. While you hear the statistics of who is in prison, we have been, as a society, the disease of racism is structural. See, it's not we who are sick. It is a system that makes its wealth off the oppression of peoples of color. See, you have had a Carter G. Woodson. You've had historians here tonight, if you are African descent. You have your people who will say, this is driving us mad. Whites, those of us who are white, like myself, we don't have Carter G. Woodson. The way they dealt with us was internalize a sense of superiority. Make me believe that I haven't had affirmative action for 400 years. Treat me as an individual so that I can say I worked hard. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. I did it. I did it. I did it. Now put me on the job with people who must speak out of the we. We did it. We did it. We did it. And see how we miss each other. So at the People's Institute, we say organizing. Create a mass movement with many dimensions to it, but all clear on this nation's race construct. There is not one field of study in the United States where you cannot earn the highest degree that this nation has to offer, the PhD. There's not one that requires you to have a mastery of this nation's race construct and its impact on the citizenry today. That's sick. When we can graduate doctors, we can graduate lawyers, we can graduate social workers, we can graduate teachers, and throw them up into a situation created by race and never have them learn what the construct of the nation is. So we shall overcome. What was Dr. King meaning when he said that? Overcome structural racism, not just individual acts of meanness. It's not those of us calling each other names, as evil as that is. It's a structural setup that goes back to 1790 and says this nation is for free white people. And we've been trying to overcome that and recapture our humanity ever since then. So the more we understand, yes, clarity on the issues, get clear on the numbers, organize, organize, organize. Thank you.